Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome on board the boat. Okay, we've left Westminster Pier. We're going to cross the river. We're going to make a little stop just here on the right. It's the London Eye, Waterloo Pier, where we'll be picking up a few more passengers. Okay, we might have one or two people on the boat who want to leave us here as well. Okay, and when we leave Waterloo Pier in about 5 minutes, we'll be heading down to Tower Pier and then down to Greenwich. Okay. Now just bear with us while we make a brief stop here, folks. Okay. Try and remain seated whilst the boat is underway. You can get up and move around, go downstairs if you like. Just be very careful if you do, because we can get rocked about by some of the passing boats. So just be very careful, especially when using the stairs at the back. Okay, use the handrails that are provided. So about 5 minutes, once we leave here, I'll be...
Oh my God.
To our right, we have this red brick building with the OXO Tower. Now this used to be a cold storage meat warehouse. But today, like many disused warehouses along the banks of the river, it's been converted into luxury riverside apartments. Right at the top of the building, underneath the glass canopy, is the Harvey Nichols restaurant. And this was once voted one of the top 10 restaurants here in London. A nice restaurant with some great views across the river. We go on the other side, folks. There's a lovely shot of the City of London. Dominating the skyline ahead of us, we have some of London's newest buildings. And as you can see, there's some weird and wonderful shapes. They have some weird and wonderful names, like the cheese grater, the scalpel, the gherkin, and the walkie-talkie. Look off to the left there, look, one of London's oldest buildings as well, dominating the skyline, St Paul's Cathedral. This is one of the best shots, if not the best shot, you'll get of St Paul's from the river. Looking directly to our left, big roof and the black pinnacle on top. This is the old City of London School, where many famous dignitaries once sought period. And if you look in between the arched windows of that building, you'll see 4 statues. From left to right, John Milton, William Shakespeare, Sir Francis Bacon, and Sir Isaac Newton. The last building on the left here, folks, the impressive semicircular building, that's Unilever House, and that's the headquarters for Unilever, the massive Anglo-Dutch manufacturer. This is the Blackfriars Road Bridge we're now passing today. Not a lot of room above us, as you can see. As the tide obviously comes up, we get restricted with what arches we can use. We've then got the Blackfriars Railway Bridge here, and a few years ago, you may remember this, Tom Cruise was railway bridge in one of the Mission Impossible films. It took Wren 35 years to build St Paul's. It was completed in the year 1710, so over 300 years ago. Above the grey dome, if you look closely, you can see people walking around. Now that's a viewing platform. The views up there, they're almost as good as the views from the London Eye. Okay, there's only one problem. There's over 500 steps to reach that viewing platform. There's no lift. So, it is hard work getting to the top, ladies and gents, okay? But it's well worth it once you're up there. Some great views across London. Buried in the crypt of St Paul's Cathedral lie some of our national heroes. These include the Iron Duke, the Duke of Wellington, Lord Nelson, and of course the architect himself, Sir Christopher. And it's probably the finest building anywhere in the city. Definitely worth it. Very impressive. St Paul's. It was also the April 20. Southwark Bridge, we're now going to pass down through as we clear the bridge. Ahead of us on the right, in the corner of the next bridge there's a building with red window frames and the lighting outside. Now this is a very nice old riverside Thameside pub. Okay, it's called the Anchor at Bankside, and believe it or not, there's been an Anchor pub here now for over 400 years. The original pub was frequented by Dr. Johnson, Samuel Pepys, Charles Dickens and William Shakespeare. Very popular, especially on a nice day like today, as you can see, very busy outside. Well worth it. A nice bit of fish and chips they do in there as well. Now folks, as we pass beneath this bridge, on the right, we have a pirate ship, a black Angelo pirate ship, which at the moment is covered in quite a bit of scaffolding. Has anybody on the boat seen that film, Pirates of the Caribbean? Yeah? This ship on the right has got absolutely nothing to do with that film whatsoever, unfortunately. Quite a good film, though. This is a replica of Sir Francis Drake's vessel, the Golden Hind, the ship in which he sailed around the world. He was the first Englishman to do this. It took him nearly 4 years. That replica just back on the right, folks, it's having a bit of a refit at the moment, but it's actually retraced Drake's voyage twice. It's now done more sea miles than the original. And ahead of us, folks, the world famous London Bridge. People travel from all over the world to see this bridge. And this is what they do. In all honesty, it's not much to look at. But it's all about the history with London Bridge, folks. We've had a bridge here now for 2,000 years, dating back to the Romans. There's a hotel in the shop, the Shangri-La Hotel, where the cheapest room is around £500. Now, directly ahead of us, folks, sitting in the water, we have London's very own warship, HMS Belfast. On the front of the ship here is a flag flying. Well, hanging. And this flag is called the Union Jack. We all know that, don't we? But this is the only Union Jack you'll see flying in London today. Whenever you see exactly the same flag flying anywhere else here in London, it's just the Union flag. It's only ever the Union Jack when it sits on the front of a naval ship on the Jack Star. But it is the only time it should be called a Union Jack. Anywhere else, it's just the Union. Did you know? The Belfast was actually built in the same shipyard as the Titanic, the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast. She last fired her guns during the Korean War, which was in the 1950s. Permanently moored here now, opened as a museum, a floating museum. Follow the buildings along on the left, and eventually you come to a small white building next to a willow tree. This is one of the oldest, most famous pubs to stand on the banks of the Thames, the Prospect of Willow. It dates back to the year 1520. Originally called the Pelican. In its long lifetime, it's had many different names. Now the pub sits in the area of Wapping, which is just on the outskirts of the city of London. During the reign of King Henry VIII, Wapping was a dangerous, a squalid place to live. Life expectancy wasn't very high. During this time, it became known as the Devil's Tavern, and it was frequented by many unsavoury characters. You'd find thieves, pirates, murderers, smugglers, all drinking in the establishment and around this time. To be honest, the clientele hasn't really changed too much today. In there today you'll find bankers, estate agents, politicians, those kinds of people. But don't let that put you off. It is a very nice place, the Prospect. Off to the left, there's you can see the cranes over here, folks. The cofferdeck, that's the sheet piling that's been extended out into the park. And we've passed a few of these work sites today as we've headed down. What's happening here is we're building a new sewage system beneath the Thames. Now, the sewage system we use today was built back in the Victorian era. And at that time, there was around 2 million people living in London. Today, there's around 9 million people living in London. That sewage system is struggling to cope. So we're building a super sewer, if you like, 80 metres beneath the river. It's going to be 20 miles long. It's one of the biggest civil engineering projects the country has ever undertaken. Lasting many years and costing billions of pounds. And Thames also To our right, we have a Globe Wharf, another converted warehouse. It's a requirement by law today that new buildings have a footpath, a walkway between the river's edge and the building itself. Okay. Now, this isn't the case with the old warehouses. They always sit right on the river's edge, and this was so years ago. Barges could be placed alongside the building and then be unloaded. Globe Wharf, an old rice warehouse, the cheapest apartment in there today, folks, sells for around £500,000. Okay, but that will be on the other side of the building, looking out onto the road. Anything this side with a river view will be a lot more money. Now, just ahead of us and to the left-hand side, we see the entrance into the Limehouse Arena. This is the entrance into a small dockway. And once you've actually passed through these lock gates ahead of you, there are 2,000 miles of inland waterways and canals. Look to the left of the lock entrance. There's a small red brick building with the conservatory around the front. And this is a pub. It's called the Narrow Limehouse, and it's actually owned by the famous foul-mouthed chef Gordon Ramsay. He owns the pub on the left, the Narrow Limehouse. Sometimes we pass by here, and if the wind is blowing in the right direction, you can actually hear him over there, effing and jeffing. And he's a very angry man for some reason. I don't know why. This one's called The Grange. You can see some people congregating out on the balcony there. The pub was made famous by Charles Dickens when he mentioned it in his book, Our Mutual Friend. He refers to the pub as the Six Jolly Fellowship of Porter. But that's the pub he's talking about, the Graves of Limehouse. The pub was bought a few years back by an English actor, Sir Ian McKellen. He bought the pub, and he actually lives a couple of doors along from the pub, right next door to Cher. Well, there she is. No, Cher doesn't. So Ian McKellen really does, and he has bought the Graves pub. He's often seen drinking in the pub. Ahead of the boats, we have the Canary Wharf development. Now, this includes the Canada Tower. That's the tallest building with the pyramids on it. The Canary Wharf development, folks, is now more or less the financial centre for the City of London, okay? And it's also home to many of our tabloid newspapers. It gets very busy over here Monday to Friday when it's buzzing with up to 100,000 office workers. It does become a bit quieter on the weekends, but there are still people over here because there's loads of bars, there's loads of restaurants, and there's an underground shopping complex beneath those towers, the Canada Tower, the City Tower, and the HSBC Tower. It's a lovely place to walk around, very modern area, lots of large open space and loads of impressive modern looking buildings. The area of land that Canary Wharf sits on here is called the Isle of Dogs, and it's a piece of land shaped like a horseshoe. Okay, now the land on the left here, it runs all the way down ahead of us. At the bottom it bends round to the left in a very large bend. Okay, the land then runs all the way back up again, parallel to this side, creating a large U-shaped or